party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to episode 18 of the Ball Talk Pod. The Thunder have come back from the All-Star break with 3 games. One of them I feel like didn't even happen last night. But before we get into that, I don't know.
You have to sit with the sadness, Ben. Let the sadness, because that's how you deal with sadness, is let it sit, you know?
I thought it was therapy.
Oh, well, therapy's good too.
The only therapy might be just another Thunder game.
Yeah, the next game. Just think about the next game. I'd agree with that.
But before we get into that, we're going to go back to the well to our little segment, News of the Week. There's been a lot happening the last couple of weeks since we last did this. So I'm going to let Chris kick us off. Chris, what's your News of the Week, man?
My News of the Week is it's sports related. It's sports adjacent, not sports specific. So in the NBA, there were 2 guys who broke news: Shams Charania and Adrian Wojnarowski. Since I think at the beginning of the year or like before the season started, Adrian Wojnarowski announced his retirement to become the director of basketball at St. Bonaventure.
St. Bonaventure. Yep.
St. Bonaventure.
It's it's where he went to college.
Where he went to college. He is now in their admin department, raising money for NIL and things like that. As a part of his NIL project, he is selling the phones that he broke big news on. Specifically, phones like the phone that he broke the news about Paul George being traded to LAC. So if you want to be a part of history and own that sort of history as a Thunder fan, you can go bid on right now. Well, at the time of this recording, and I'm looking at a day-old tweet, so maybe a day ago, it was only $350. So support St. Bonaventure's and get a little piece of Thunder history while you're at it.
Can you imagine if you got Shea to sign that phone?
That would be the craziest piece of pizza sports history of all time.
I know.
The phone that announced Shea getting traded to the Thunder, signed by Shea, as he's as he's winning the MVP.
I mean, you can even have Dub sign it technically because his pick was a Clippers pick.
Right. You need all those guys to sign it.
But Shea obviously is the focal point of that. But like you get one of those framed signed jerseys with like the plaques that say like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, 3-time All-Star,
right,
MVP, hopefully, you know. And then next to it is like this little box of just iPhone. Like I don't even know what iPhone we were on in 2018 or 2019, I think. But whatever it is, it looks very different, and that's an antique. And antiques are worth a lot of money. So maybe we start a GoFundMe and bring the iPhone to Oklahoma City.
Bring the iPhone to Oklahoma City.
We can put it on display like in the Thunder, like they do like a Hall of Fame thing.
They
don't currently,
cool.
but they should. That would be sick.
Yeah,
that'd be so cool. Like Kansas, the one of the big donors, David Booth for the University of Kansas, bought the original rules of basketball that James Naismith wrote and donated it to the university, and it's on display at Allen Fieldhouse.
Cool. Yeah,
we could do that with this phone. It's the same thing, same level of importance,
same level of importance as the original rules of basketball.
Yeah. Honestly, super cool. He's doing that. I think that's a really fun way to get people involved and kind of go back to his roots in a way. But also, it's like, how many phones did you have, and how many times did you cycle through them? And then did you just broke Paul George, was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. I should probably authenticate this or something.
That's a good question. Was he like, after a big trade, like, all right, I'm done with that phone.
I got to put that away.
I got to go save that one because this is like a pre-planned thing. Like he knew he was going to sell.
It's like in golf when you like hit a hole in one or get an eagle or something. You don't play with that ball again.
Yes, yeah. And that Kawhi and Paul George trade was a hole in one for Adrian Wojnarowski.
Hey, it was a hole-in-one for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's all I know.
That's right.
But
So, Ben,
there's Chris's
what's your
news of the week.
news?
My news, and I'm going to keep it in state, and it's kind of crazy that there's 7 games into this, but the Oklahoma baseball team is 7-0 in this young season. And coming off a season last year where they were the 9th overall seed, hosted a regional for the first time in years in Norman, fell short in that regional, but the crowd and everything you could tell was really backing the team. They returned, a few guys. Easton Carmichael is a big preseason All-American at catcher and DH. They have some pitchers, Kyson Witherspoon, who might be the best pitcher in the college level right now. They've swept through their 7 games. They've had 3 run rules. They went down to like an invitational down in Austin, or I guess Round Rock, and beat 2 top 10 teams. They actually just played this morning, or not this morning, but at 4:00 today in Norman in 75-degree weather, which was beautiful. That might be the news of the day, honestly, is that there's no snow on the ground and it's beautiful outside.
Yes.
But prime baseball weather, the SEC, I think you could argue, and I think I would, is in terms of ranking most important sports for each school. Football obviously is number 1. And I think for a lot of them, you could say that baseball is the second most important sport on campus for each of these schools. I mean, people just
right.
pack
SEC.
college baseball stadiums.
Yeah, and I think it's evident in the rankings. The SEC has 8 of the top 12 teams in the country.
And that doesn't include, or are you on perfect
having
game?
the top 4. Yeah, perfect game. Yeah.
Yeah, because OU's 12th for perfect game. They're like 16th on D1 baseball, and Baseball America didn't rank them, which is so funny.
That is weird.
But if you're in Norman and you can get to a baseball game, I highly recommend it. They're trying to do a lot of stuff this year to get people there because they obviously see it as an important thing for the athletic program to have a competent baseball team.
Right.
We don't have a lot of other competent sports at the time on campus.
Men-wise, in the boy department.
We are a diamond sports school. We are, the softball team's undefeated, number 1 in the country. The baseball team's undefeated, number 12 in the country. They're playing great.
I don't think, are we number 1? I thought Texas was number 1.
Texas lost last week.
Twice, I think.
I don't know. I know for sure once.
They lost to Stanford and someone else.
Yeah. It was someone else. Maybe it was twice. I think like Ryan will probably end up texting us saying what actually is right. But that's my news of the week. The OU baseball team. News. It's great news for those in the state of Oklahoma. You have the Thunder doing what they're doing outside of last night's game. And then softball and baseball are starting to kick off, and they're playing really well. Basketball at OU, we'll see how it goes. Women's might get a top 4 national seed. But men's basketball, we'll see
how that kind of shakes out.
We'll see how that goes.
A firing. I read something today, some article, I think posted by ESPN, was saying that Porter might have saved his job with his win over Mississippi State.
For a week.
Okay. Yeah.
He saved it a little, like he has a chance.
Yeah.
Now it's just not, they're not going to fire. This is a little OU tangent, or OU basketball tangent. They're not going to fire him in the middle of the season. That's not how college basketball works, except Utah, I guess. Utah just fired their head coach. But he most likely this team loses out. I thought they were going to lose out before the Mississippi State game.
Right.
He would not get fired until after the season because it does no good outside of you just want to make sure you have a head coach in place when the transfer portal opens.
Right.
So I think it's like early to mid March is when that happens. Now it's going to be crazy when OU wins against Kentucky tomorrow night, and Lloyd Noble secures. Like I think if they win one of their remaining games, especially against Kentucky, they play Missouri, who's ranked, and Texas at Texas, and then obviously there's the SEC tournament. But there's like, I mean, they're currently projected in the tournament, so
which is crazy to me.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, this could all be talk, and Porter somehow gets in the tournament, makes a Loyola Chicago run, and there's a Final Four banner in Lloyd Noble next year.
And you can't fire him for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. And if that happens, I will be beyond speechless. So, but yeah, there's your little OU update.
I have some more news. So there's some more basketball news. One's an apology, and one is news about a star in the league. So if you haven't heard, Victor Wembanyama has been diagnosed with a some blood clot in his shoulder, and has been out for the season. So he was on track to be the defensive player of the year, and now is no longer eligible because he will not play 65 games. That is the breaking point in the NBA for postseason awards. MVP, rookie of the year. You have to play 65 games. So Victor Wembanyama is not going to be able to play 65 games and will miss out on that award. The person that is now projected to win the award, Jaren Jackson Jr., is up for an extension at the end of the year. And if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, his extension will go from $130 million to $330 million, a $200 million bump for winning Defensive Player of the Year, because both Chet and Victor Wembanyama got hurt. So it's just kind of a crazy amount of money for this happenstance.
Well, in the new CBA, they want to try to help small market teams, and Memphis is on the smaller side compared to some of the other NBA teams. But the way that the new CBA, which is kind of what dictates what contracts are for, what you can sign, like salary cap, penalties, luxury tax, all that stuff, it's almost hurting these players that are like borderline supermax, which is the biggest contract that you can sign. Because if you make first team if you make all NBA first, second, or third team, win a Defensive Player of the Year, and I think there's a few other pieces of criteria for it, then you are eligible for the supermax, which is then a larger percentage of the cap, which is how they do the max contracts. It's a like 30% of the cap or something like that. And so it puts Memphis in a really tough position, because you're then paying a guy who just made a second All-Star game at 25 years old. He is very, 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 very good, but he is not like someone like Shea or Jokic, or you would think Luka until this year. Someone like that,
chubby,
you do not second guess giving them a supermax contract. But then you start getting into the weeds of, like, do you want a Jaren Jackson Jr. being the third highest paid player in the entire league? And then how do you build a roster around it?
How do you pay Ja?
Well, now there's rumors that Ja might get traded, which would just be crazy. I mean, no one's untouchable at this point except for like 3 players. But it's crazy. I don't know if he'll win it. Evan Mobley's been playing really well, and your boy Lou Dort has the third best odds at plus 1,000. I saw today. Stuff would really have to break right for Lou to go win it, but he has a chance.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I think 3 of the top 6 odds are Thunder players, between Dort, Shea, and Dub, and does not include Hartenstein or Chet, because they don't, as Chris mentioned, they haven't played 65 games, so they don't qualify for the for any awards.
Yeah. And then I do owe an apology to Zion Williamson. There was a news segment where I called him large, kind of in the Luka territory of large, but it came out that he is now weighing 264, which has been the lightest he's weighed since 2019 when he was drafted. So shout out to Zion Williamson for trimming down, and take this as my apology.
I'm sure
I know he's out there listening.
Zion would be very excited to hear that. He's definitely slimmed down. The Pelicans are still trash, but there you have it, folks. Chris is apologizing to Zion Williamson, and the Pelicans still suck. But
the Pelicans, yeah. That BI trade's looking real bad now.
Yeah. Nothing they can do matters. The only thing that matters to me, Chris, is the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA.
Sorry, Bailey.
Yeah. Shout out my wife. Since we last spoke, the Thunder have come back from the All-Star break, played 3 games, and they are 2-1 in those games. I basically, until about 24 hours ago, which was 2 hours after tip-off of the third game, I would have bet a lot of money they were going to be 3-0. They are not.
They're not.
So running through these last three games, the Thunder came out of the break. They beat the Utah Jazz 130-107. Chet played in that game. It was a blowout the whole time. I don't think Shea played the fourth quarter. Chet had 20 and 7. He said in the post game that he felt like he was starting to get his swagger
back. Ooh, I think I got my swagger back.
But he played well. Yeah, oh yeah. Chet might need to recreate that. But
yeah.
Chet played well. The whole team played well. I mean, the Jazz are bad, so it was kind of a pretty obvious win. Then what was crazy is the Thunder, as we mentioned before the All-Star break, we played the Wolves the game before the All-Star break. They lost. And then we had a back-to-back with the Wolves, the second and third game out of the All-Star break. The first one being in Minnesota on Sunday night on ESPN. It was like an 8:51 tip. It's a late night in Oklahoma City.
Late.
And then followed it up with a game 19 hours later after the end of the Sunday night game. Both teams had to fly to Oklahoma City. I read online that apparently the Timberwolves even got to Oklahoma City like a couple hours before Oklahoma City did.
I heard that too.
Which I'm like, how is that possible? Air traffic control. Where's your pride? I need you to redirect that plane to as far away as possible.
Keep them in the air at least.
I know it's a touchy subject with planes right now, so I don't want to cross any lines. But send them to Houston. Send them to Dallas. Tell them they got to go stay there for the night, and they can drive up I-35 in the morning because there's wind. It's Oklahoma. There's a lot of wind. So just a note, I thought that was crazy. But the first game, Chris, I know you were out of town. Did you have a chance to watch the Wolves game on Sunday night?
I watched a little bit of it. What I know is that it felt like we were shooting the ball pretty well, playing pretty good defense. But, all in all, it felt like a really comfortable game for the Thunder, and it felt like Chet was starting to play a little better in conjunction with all the guys trying
His
to
shot
catch
looks
up.
really good.
Yeah. And so
it looks so natural.
That one felt like an inevitability. Like, I know that like they caught up and made it a game at halftime, but it just felt like once we caught the lead again near the fourth quarter or near the end of the fourth quarter or whenever we did, it felt almost like an inevitability again.
I think it was a really good game in terms of watching it to the common fan. I think I tweeted it out during the game from our X account or Twitter account at BallTalkPodOK that was an MVP statement game from Shea. And it wasn't just him scoring. He had 37, but he also had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. And in the fourth quarter, I can't remember the exact number, but I think he only scored like 4 or 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
But they were on a bit of a run. Shea came back in, and that game was over the second that Shea hit the court.
Right.
He was making every right read. We were shooting well around him, which is the biggest key, which is something we'll talk about for the third game or the second game with the Wolves. He could do no wrong in that fourth quarter. I mean, he upped the intensity. He got everyone around him open looks. He wasn't forcing it, which I think it's a fine line right now with Shea in terms of he said before he wants to get these guys comfortable for the playoffs. But then also there's going to be times in the playoffs, which I just kind of assume he's going to be ready for it. That he's like, regardless of those around him, he's going to have to win a game or two.
The best player is going to have to go and make the best play.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he did in game 4 last year in the Mavs series in Dallas. We should not have won that game. And Shea just was like, I'm not losing. Right. And he's going to have to do that a few times. But then there are also going to be games where, like last night, I think he was overly passive and tried to get guys open looks, and he was successful. We just didn't make shots. It's a fine line there.
Yeah, they also played much better defense on the perimeter. They sent 2 guys at him a lot, tried to throw off his game more than they had in the previous game.
Yeah, they were doubling him a lot. But yeah, the first game before we move on to the game last night. It was 130-123. Chet played in that game. He had 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 of 4 from 3, which is one of his biggest perks and biggest benefits to this team outside of rebounding and shot blocking is his floor spacing. And I kind of thought he was going to play last night too, with how well he's looked.
Right.
Because I do think we're gearing up closer and closer to the time where he's not on any kind of restriction. And I can look in a second. I don't know when the Thunder play back to back again, but that'll kind of be if you could pull that up real quick. That'll obviously be a litmus test. But I say all that, there's not back to backs in the NBA playoffs.
Right.
Like a lot of times it's 2 and 3 days between games. And so when looking at the game last night, which we can move on to, honestly, outside of Shea playing like the MVP and us shooting 54% from 3, those are kind of the main points. You mentioned we blew basically a 20-point lead. We were losing at halftime. Dub hit a half-court shot to pull us within 4. It's the NBA.
Right.
Game of runs. It happens with the worst teams and the best teams. And it wasn't overly shocking. The Thunder have been on the other end of that more times than not. But moving on to the second game against the Wolves last night in Oklahoma City. I was in attendance for this game, and the Thunder lost 131-128. It was the first game this year the Thunder went into overtime. Obviously, they're 0-1 in overtime now. This game was over going into the fourth quarter. It was over halfway through the fourth quarter. It was over with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter until it wasn't.
I don't know what happened.
I was in the arena, and the whole time, in that entire fourth quarter, I turned to Connor, my buddy who I went to the game with, and I just was like, what is happening? Like, I can't it legitimately was like, this makes no sense. I don't know how this is happening. The Wolves did not play Anthony Edwards for the majority of the fourth quarter. Basically, they took him out with
He didn't play until overtime.
2 minutes left in overtime. They brought him in, which they came in after the game and said that he had a calf strain, and then somehow in overtime the team doctor came up and said, "Oh, he's good to play." I made a face at the camera, and those that can't see it, which is everyone but Chris. But before we move into that fourth quarter, there's a lot to dissect there on a top level. It's not, regardless, I'll preface all this by saying this game does not change anything about this team, what they're capable of doing. Chet did not play. Hartenstein got hurt in the third quarter for a facial contusion. He got like a bloody nose and it didn't come back. It was very weird.
He played for like three plays with like his blood like wiping it on his shorts.
Yeah, they had to stop the game a couple of possessions after he came out because they like found spots of blood on the court.
Yeah, he was dripping all over the place.
Which is crazy. But to start this game off, the Thunder, they were up 4 in the first quarter, and then they outscored the Wolves by 15 in the second. It was interesting because Mark flipped the rotation. And after the game, he said it was because Dub was playing so well. He had Dub play the whole first quarter for the, or at least extended run in the first quarter. Usually Shea plays the whole first quarter.
Right.
And he shifted all of those minutes because Dub was playing so well. Shea still had 11 in the first, which is just crazy. He didn't play the whole first and still had double digits. The team played well. The energy was there. The Wolves, just kind of like the night before, they started out cold. They were not hitting threes. They didn't have either of the games. They didn't have Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, or Julius Randle. Almost to a benefit to them. I think they did not have them.
I think they're better without Rudy Gobert specifically.
I think it's Julius Randle. I think Randle's the one that. I think Rudy Gobert you can play in spots because of his length and how much he impacts the shots at the rim against a team like the Thunder that lead the league in drives. Really attack the front end.
I think Nickeil Alexander and McDaniels affect the shots way more than Rudy Gobert has in the past. I feel just like they're so long. They're so long, and even like Anthony Edwards with that block on Shea the last play of the game.
Won the game. Well, there's like 10 seconds. It was the play that decided the game for the most part.
Right.
But yeah, I think Julius Randle's the one to me who is somewhat of a ball hog. His attitude isn't there. His effort isn't there. It'd be very interesting to see when he comes back how the Wolves handle his playing minutes. And if Chris Finch is a good coach,
He doesn't play him.
he doesn't play Randle. He'll play him, but he plays him in spurts. He plays him like to start the game, and that's it. Almost like Josh Giddey last year. He has to give him the Josh Giddey treatment that the Thunder did in the playoffs, where he was announced for the starting lineup, and basically the first whistle of the game, you yanked him out because he missed a defensive assignment or shot an air ball, whatever it may be. But at least Josh Giddey was giving effort. I don't think Randle has that. But man, they were playing so good last night. At halftime, they were up 19.
Yeah.
And then going into the fourth quarter, I think it was 22, if my math is correct.
I know the fourth quarter got up to like 23. Someone hit a 3 to push it to 23 at some point.
Yeah, so it was the largest comeback in Timberwolves history because it got to 25. And when looking at this box score, the fourth quarter numbers were the Wolves scored 41 points. The Thunder had 19.
Yeah, we couldn't stay. We couldn't stay in front of the sun. I mean, it's crazy.
And like we mentioned before, Ant didn't play the majority of the fourth. They were running 2 rookies out there, which Jalen Clark for the Timberwolves, decent basketball player. Like was in the G League for most of the year. Now he's starting for him. He played really well the night before in Minnesota. He had like 14 points, career high. He got a head injury. They took him back, tested him for a concussion. He was fine, but he missed the last like quarter and a half of that game. And it turned the tide to the Thunder for sure. And then you could argue, or not even argue, there's a true parallelism to Hartenstein getting hurt for the Thunder because the Wolves are big and physical. Even without Gobert, Randle didn't play. Naz Reid is an athletic freak. He's 6'11", can shoot it, put it on the floor. They still have size. All of their guys can jump out of the gym. So many times in that comeback, and even in overtime, there's a play specifically where, we were up a point. Ludor got a stop, got the ball. He throws it ahead. He like fumbles it, and it ends up in Ant Edwards' hands. He shoots like a step back 3.
Airballs.
He traveled on the play, misses it, and Naz Reid grabs the ball over Shea, and on the putback they call Shea for a foul. It was just one of those, like, I was watching the Thunder 2 years ago where they just couldn't get a rebound. They had to pray that it bounced just the right way so a guard could like run through it, not even go up and grab it. Hartenstein not being there to get rebounds. Chet, I mean, if either of those guys are healthy for the whole game, the Thunder are still on a winning streak. They're on a 3-game winning streak. And they don't go to overtime. Hartenstein, especially in the fourth quarter, what switched the game astronomically. Shea did not play the first 4 minutes, which is very typical. And at the start of the fourth, I turned to the people I was with and I was like, I think we don't see Shea again. Like it was that level of a blowout. And Dub had been playing well. We had shot it well enough. It wasn't as hot as the night before, but it was good. And then they cut it to like 15-17. Mark called timeout. Shea comes back in the 8-minute mark. Dub did not come out. Dub normally comes out with like 6 to 8 minutes left and then comes back in for the stretch run. When they brought Shea back in, they were doing pretty much every team that's beaten us this year in the fourth quarter has run this defense where they're basically trapping Shea at the top, basically as he crosses half court. And the goal is basically don't let Shea beat you. Typically when we have Isaiah Hartenstein, and I think you could argue Chet, but we haven't been in a game like this with Chet healthy. If you throw the ball to Isaiah Hartenstein at the free throw line, he can either shoot his floater, go dunk it. There's a cutter from the free 3-point line on one side, or there's Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Lou Dort, whoever it may be, maybe even Chet if they're playing double big, in the corner. He's so good at playmaking. He's arguably the best playmaker on the team, especially for his position. And we had like Caruso there who did fine, but he's 6'5". It's a very different dynamic. If Hartenstein's there able to make plays, you generate a little bit more offense in that fourth quarter, and you're not in overtime. The Thunder are winning that game, even if the Wolves cut it, because they hit some crazy shots. Naz Reid, I remember, hit one where he did 4 or 5 back and forth moves with the ball, step back 3 over like Dort or Dub, one of those guys, and just cashed it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's that again. That's the NBA. You hit tough shots, you tip your cap. That's all you can do. But I think those are kind of the main things for me in terms of if you have rebounding. Like, although this team generates a ton of turnovers and a ton of steals, you still have to get a rebound when you need it, especially in closing minutes of games, because it's a momentum killer. When you give up an offensive rebound, there's a putback or back out for a 3, especially on the road. If you're trying to close out a series, the crowd erupts. And then to the playmaking of mainly Hartenstein, I think Chet could have done that as well when they were not letting Shea do anything.
I also think having a guy like that who's able to create space for Shea allows Shea to create in those moments too. So not having Hartenstein to set a large screen and having instead like a guard-to-guard screen limits Shea's ability to get away from that double and allows him to be more of a playmaker too. So not only have you lost Hartenstein as a playmaker, you've limited Shea in that, making it much tougher for him to distribute the ball.
Hartenstein he's the best screen setter I think the Thunder have had, and the only other person you could compare him to is Steven Adams.
Oh, I love watching highlights of Steven Adams or screens. He's
specifically Patrick Beverley.
Ones. Yes.
It was just a bad break, and again, it just felt like such an anomaly. Like I was walking out of the arena, and you could tell everyone was just kind of stunned. Like, shocked. Not a lot of people were talking coming out of the Paycom Center, and it was just like, I'm not even mad that this happened. It doesn't make sense to me. It sucks. It definitely sucks. But it also was a Monday Night Basketball game in the middle of February that hopefully in 3 months is irrelevant.
Right. It's a blip on your radar at the end of the season. I think to think about this game being more than 1 of 82, as Mark would say, is a mistake. I think it would just drive you crazy as a fan. So, the way I think about it is like, this is a really good lesson. And if we have to learn this lesson 1 or 2 more times, like, that sucks. You prefer to like much
rather you learn this lesson in February and March than in April, May, and June.
And
it sounds like a cop out to say, but that's just reality.
And we've talked about this a lot. It's you're not going to win the playoffs in February and March. You're going to lose games. Great teams lose games every time. And you've said it before. I thought it was a good point. Sam Presti said that 3 or 4 times a year in every team in the NBA, the sky starts to fall, and you think everything's over, burn it to the ground. While this loss doesn't make much sense, it's not an unforeseen loss. You're going to lose games. You lose games different ways all the time. And so hopefully the Thunder can use this as a lesson and not have to learn this lesson again in the playoffs or before, But if, they might have to learn it again, which is totally fine as long as it's like before the playoffs.
I think my advice to people when looking at how important is this and do you worry about how this game unfolded? No. Only, I say that, if it happens again and the Thunder are up 25 and you see a pattern and it happens 2 or 3 more times against better competition, fine. But then also, if it happens again and Chet and Hartenstein aren't playing, a fully healthy Thunder team is all I care about in terms of getting from point A to point B, which is from the rest of this season to hopefully June in the NBA Finals.
Right.
Because there's nothing, again, it's almost best case scenario that it happened now, which it sounds like such a cop-out to say, so I don't love saying it. But there's nothing about this team that is different from 26 hours ago when the game tipped off or at halftime, other than they didn't have their 2 7-footers for basically the whole second half of that game. And this team with a 7-footer on the floor is, I don't want to say unbeatable, but damn near in today's
only
NBA.
lost 4 games or something total?
Yeah, it's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Which I say that they've only lost 11 total. And that's another thing too. It's crazy going from 2 years ago, you were 40 and 42, and you were just hoping to win like 1 or 2 a week. That'd be a good week.
Mm-hmm.
Forget a winning streak.
Right.
We just need to stay 500.
Yeah.
And you got into the play-in. It was a great experience for the team. Last year, it was all cake. Like, it was like, we shouldn't even be doing this right now. How the heck is this team? At that point last year, they were the youngest team in the NBA. How are they the number 1 seed? And this year, it's like, especially with the start we had, you had Chet get hurt, and you only saw the team improve off of that. Not because of addition by subtraction, but just how talented and how well put together this team is. The expectations are enormous. If there's a game in the playoffs that the Thunder lose, which will happen, I highly recommend those just getting off of Twitter.
Yeah.
Because that's just
100%.
a toxic place. And that comes with the expectations of a team that's on pace to win like 66 or 67 games.
Right.
So we're very spoiled, and yet it's a blessing and a curse. But I think one more note on last night's game. Chris Finch, the head coach for the Timberwolves. What are you going to say?
I don't know what it is about him.
What a loser.
He's not. I don't like watching him coach. What did he do to make you call him a loser? I must have missed something. I just don't like him.
Well, that's fair. One, he also like gets hurt on the sideline. He literally tore his patella tendon coaching a basketball game. Let me see. I'm pulling up his quote now. Chris Finch last night after the win, emphasis on win in Oklahoma City. He says, it's so frustrating to play this team because they foul a ton. They really do. They foul all the time. And then you can't really touch Shea. It's a very frustrating thing, and it takes a lot of mental toughness to play through it. They shot more free throws than the Thunder. And oh yeah, they won the game.
Yeah,
why are you complaining?
It felt like the end of the game. It was like every time down the court, it felt like a college basketball game where they just stopped because they got a foul and they shot free throws.
The Wolves shot 32 free throws in the second half.
Which is
I don't
crazy.
know. I'm making this stat up because I don't think it's true, but I'd be shocked if the Thunder shot more than 32 in a single game this year. Like, why is that the time? And it might be as like some kind of strategy of like putting some kind of bug in an ear of the refs if we match up with them in the playoffs of like, hey, be watching this. Like I've been on the other end and I've made my comment, like, get on my side, which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, looking at
they shot a ton of free throws.
I think it was like 18 more. I'm trying to pull it up, but I'm like a little worked up about this. So my hands are shaking.
I also did look up. We have 5 more back-to-backs this season.
Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know.
We have 5 more back-to-backs.
We'll see when Chet, because I do think eventually it'll get to the point where Chet does play those. But last night in the game, the Thunder shot 29 free throws.
Okay.
And the Wolves shot 39.
And
Shea shot 17 of our free throws.
Right.
But no one else is getting to the line. Dub shot 6. No one else shot more than 2. For them, Jay McDaniels was 9 of 9. Naz Reid was 6 of 6. Anthony Edwards was 6 of 10. There was 4 straight times the man stepped to the line, and I am not exaggerating. 4 straight times he went to the line and missed the first free throw.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, he might, before the calf strain came out, I was like, he might have just gotten benched.
I thought he got benched.
He wasn't focused.
I thought he got benched. I think, like you said, when you made the face at the camera, I think he was benched, but they came out with a calf strain to be like, our best player
Save
wasn't
face.
benched. Yeah, our best player wasn't benched. So
yeah, he said that.
he said that the first time we played too.
The New Year's Eve game.
Yeah.
He talked about how much we foul. And the thing about that is, one, you won the game. Two, you shot way more. 10 more free throws than us. You shot more free throws than us the game before. The Thunder in the NBA rank dead last in free throw attempts per game.
Right.
They rank 28th in free throws made per game. They get called for they get called for fouls. That's why we put people at the free throw line so much.
I will say, you're right. We do foul a lot. He's not wrong, but to say that it's like more than other teams, because they played pretty aggressive defense too. I thought they should have got called for, hand checking and things like that the Thunder seem to get called for a lot. But, they weren't getting called for it. So
it's fine. Like, it's not a problem, because you can say like they foul a lot and it makes it hard because you have to take care of the ball and make your free throws. That's where the mental toughness comes in. I absolutely get that. But if you're complaining about foul calls that you're already getting, shut up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the greatest point in all of this, if you're a Thunder fan, if you're a fan, or if you're on the team, in the NBA, it is a well-known fact that in the playoffs, the whistles go away.
Right.
It is way more physical basketball. You're not seeing as many free throws. And if you think the Thunder are getting away with murder now, play in your funeral.
Yeah, yeah. Right. They're gonna be defensive monsters in the playoffs because they can foul. The refs swallow their whistle. That's why they say defense travels to the playoffs, and defense is like one of the things you take to the playoff. A lot has to do with like what the refs allow you to get away with.
Well, and they say that one of the biggest keys, and this is something going back to last night's game with the Thunder, one of the biggest keys in NBA playoff series is the shooting of role players. And that is one of the things that is less likely to travel.
Right.
We saw that last year. We were the number one 3-point shooting team in the NBA in terms of percentage last year, and you would have thought we were dead last in that Mavs series.
Right.
And we just couldn't stop them, and they hit shots. It's a make or miss league, and that's reality. But I just don't get his comments. It doesn't mean anything. And going to the shooting part that we mentioned, kind of jumping around back into this, because I got over this game during this today, and then we started podcasting, and all this is coming back now. The Thunder, I when we were walking back to the car, I said out loud, I was like, I can't tell you the last time we hit a three in that game. We missed our last 13 threes, and most of them were wide open. Yeah. Because as I said, they were blitzing Shea, making him get rid of the ball, and usually it was like Wiggins or Caruso missed a few, Kaysen missed them, Dort shot abysmally. He was like 1 of 6 or something, 1 of 5 from 3 last night. We just didn't hit him. If one of those goes in, you're not in overtime, and this is almost just like you almost don't think about what happened.
Well, I think especially if you hit one early on in the fourth, with 3 minutes left, you hit a 3 and you push that lead back up to 10.
You don't let it get to single digits.
You don't let it get to single digits, and it's you're smooth sailing. So that, they have to shoot better, right? In the playoffs, they're gonna have to make shots.
And that was true 48 hours ago. That was true 24 hours ago.
Right.
100%. Before that game. But it's a tough loss. It's frustrating. As I said, the best therapy will be the Thunder game tomorrow night. Rest in peace, the Brooklyn Nets. I feel very bad for them. I say that. I might have jinxed it. You never know. Knock on wood.
I'll knock on wood. I'll knock on some glass.
One thing I thought was interesting before we head out, they asked Mark after the game. The Thunder were up 3 when the Wolves had the ball at the end of regulation. And there's this huge debate right now in basketball about, do you foul up three? And a lot of coaches are saying yes, because they don't have an opportunity to tie the game on that play. And you would like to think you trust your team to get a rebound if they miss, or to go down and execute on the other and make your free throws so you don't have to worry about it. And Mark said there's context to when they do it. A lot. He said, like, most of the time he's a foul up three kind of guy, but it's not every time. And he's never going to tell us what differentiates those times. Last night, Caruso was on the floor. Jaden McDaniels, who played great for them last night, was a huge reason why they won the game. He had 27 points. He drives in. We're up 3. He's going up for a layup, and Caruso reaches in and fouls him. He makes the layup.
Right.
And it was like I immediately said out loud, I was like, why did you foul that? Like, give up the 2.
Right.
Get the ball to Shea. He's going to go make 2 free throws, and we do this all again.
Right.
And I in my brain, I'm like, did Caruso think, like, was the play to, like, okay, if they get to a layup, go ahead and foul, and he just was out of position, too far behind, whatever, so that he couldn't, like, actually foul him to the extent of he can't get a shot up. And I believe Mark when he says that it's a case-by-case situation, and so I just was like, I literally yelled out loud, I was like, why did you foul that? Which is, I mean, and it goes to show that I can't remember the last time the Thunder were in a one-possession game when a possession decided the game. Because we've been very blessed with many blowouts. And I think best case for this team, or best thing that can happen to this team, is if they play a good handful of close games, the remaining 26 or 25 games remaining in this regular season. But even with all that, my vent session, appreciate everybody listening to it. The Thunder are 46-11, number 1 in the West. They have an 8.5 game lead on the Denver Nuggets, who have moved into second place, which isn't shocking. Rockets have dropped back a lot. Memphis has dropped back. Lakers are playing well. We're currently on my TV above me is the Luka Bowl. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're getting into the situation where you start tracking seeding in terms of who could the Thunder play in the play-in, things like that. It could be the Wolves,
right?
Because they're currently seventh in the West. With they're tied with the Clippers, who are 6th, but the Clippers have the tiebreaker. But yeah, it's full steam ahead to the end of the regular season, and I just know the Thunder are going to be first, and I really, really, really want Shea to win MVP, and then I really, 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 really want this team to go win a championship.
Yes. Agreed.
And last night does not change any of that.
Nope. And that doesn't change my feeling that they will.
Yeah. I agree.
So.
Cool. Well, there's your vent sesh for the frustrated Thunder fan after last night's loss. Thunder are back in action tomorrow night. A couple more games left this week, but we'll be back later this week for some more content. Appreciate everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
All night long, party, party, we like to party, 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 all night long, party, party.